I studied at an Islamic secondary school back in Nigeria, and also when I went to university in Manchester, I was frequenting a lot of the ISOC events. Through that experience, I guess I had a lot of questions. I was looking for answers, went online, tried to read up books, but a lot of what I found felt like it was conflicting, and so I didn't know where to go, who to go to for help. And eventually I came across the Cambridge Muslim College website, and I was sort of really impressed with the introduction of the BA, like what it had to offer, sort of in terms of engaging with the rich traditional scholarship, and in a way that will allow me to sort of remain faithful to the past and apply what's necessary to the present.
I've been a Muslim for about 4 years now. I came to Cambridge Muslim College because I wanted a secure and reliable place to seek knowledge. I came from Australia, where I was living, to take this course because I thought there was something unique about the Cambridge Muslim College.
The BA program in Islamic Studies at Cambridge Muslim College is a very unique program. It brings together a study of classical Islamic studies subjects with a number of modern contextual subjects, and each of these are engaged with in a very particular way.
We're not only going through reading texts, but showing them how these texts should be read, how these texts should be understood.
We have core Islamic studies subjects in Islamic law, Islamic theology, logic, legal theory, Arabic, Quranic and Hadith studies, Islamic history.
In the Islamic theology module, what we're trying to do is show them why and how an Islamic theologian has historically structured his thought and why they think the way that they do. This is important because it serves to build up a hierarchy of how knowledge works, and at the basis of that you find Islamic theology, in that it provides the basic premises and first principles for all other sciences to take their cue.
That's your core Islamic studies part of our curriculum. And then we augment this with a series of contextual courses, primarily in the social sciences, and we add modules in Western philosophy, philosophy of science, world history, and ultimately to give the student this holistic view of the world in which he or she lives, and to bring that into the conversation of these great traditions of Islamic learning, so they can think at a much deeper level of the questions of faith in today's world. And I don't think you'll find a program that's quite like it.
The first year of the Islamic theology module on the BA program, we tried to familiarize students with the concepts within the Kalam tradition, what these concepts mean, how they're supposed to be understood, the context in which they came about. The second and third year is spent studying some of the more classical texts and really trying to grapple with the rational arguments that are being put forward, so as to really give them a broad set of skills with which they can then go on and begin to have a conversation with questions that they find in the modern world.
A very big part of Islamic theology is actually tightening your thinking. To be able to talk about rational proofs, you have to know how to think rationally.
One of the things that I've really gotten out of my experience, or my learning experience here, is sort of understanding or engaging with how a lot of the scholars in the past thought. So, for example, in fiqh, we try to, it's not just about simply knowing the rules of the law, but we try to crack the cases, and that kind of allows us a window into the minds of how the scholars at the time were thinking, and that has further allowed me to think about things deeper on a more nuanced level.
Islamic law is the discipline which classically would have been called fiqh. What we do on the BA is we study a complete classical text, but the activity is not memorizing. The activity is one of trying to grapple with what these rules are conveying.
I came into this college thinking that fiqh was simply a list of rules that you had to just sort of memorize. I learnt during the course of this that there's a lot more than that. It's about learning, like, what is the framework that we need to kind of get into.
The end result then is someone who has a very good grasp of why the rules are the way they are and the very difficult questions of what this might or might not mean today.
Our teachers, they've all spent years studying the traditional Islamic sciences, and so they're a wealth of knowledge. They don't just give us the simple answers. Rather, they help us to read the text for ourselves and to think for ourselves and to be able to come to our own conclusions. It's a very intimate kind of small cohort. Rather than just sitting at the back of a large lecture theatre, you really get to know your teachers, and you're really sharing ideas with them at the same time that they're teaching you and sharing their ideas with you.
You're really encouraged to say what you think and engage with the text, ask questions. We're encouraged to do group work and have discussions about the particular lecture in class that day, or the teacher might throw out a question that will get everyone to sort of contribute, and we all sort of bounce off one another and everybody voices their opinions in a very engaging and intellectually stimulating environment. Well, it enables you to think on a much deeper level, and in so doing you're becoming a lot more critical and a lot more aware. There's a difference between knowing something and understanding it. We're really sort of pushed to think in those ways, because when you look at the scholars of the past, that's exactly what they were doing. Constantly thinking about, okay, how do we address our issues? How do we use the law? How do we apply it in our context? Once you're sort of trained to think that way, you can sort of then take that and apply it to your own time.
There is no other way forward for our community. Our questions of how should we do marriage and divorce today in modern Britain, questions of the real role of the mosque in today's world, or zakat in today's world. We will not find these answers ready-made in a textbook.
Quite naturally, we have problems and questions that are coming from science, questions of philosophy, questions of mathematics, and we need scholars who are properly trained to be able to begin the journey of answering and engaging these really deep questions.
The journey of seeking knowledge never ends, and you can actually make that a large part of what you do in your life, as in you can become a scholar. And I didn't have that ambition as such before, but now I'm seeing that there's a possibility that that's something that you could do.
Cambridge Muslim College, training the next generation of Muslim thinkers.